Hello and very welcome to everyone on my podcast, UnHamsterwheeled. My name is Sylvia Brindert-Püls, and today my guest is Terryann Nikides. She's one of my teachers. I've met her about 15 years ago. She is an expert in helping people uncover their unconscious, subconscious beliefs and let go of them. She does a lot of different things, and we're going to talk about them. Very warm welcome, Terryann. It was so nice to see you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for inviting me. Great title, by the way, of your podcast, UnHamsterwheeled. I thought, that's kind of what I do, is get you off that hamster wheel. So yeah, yes. Great title. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. This is, for us all, every single belief is a hamster wheel. It just keeps you going in your mind, the ups and downs. And this is something I'd like to talk about you today. Just a quick story. I didn't plan to talk about this, but it happened today because it's kind of, it's about this rigid beliefs, following the rules. So I went to the pool with Lima and Bo this morning, and we brought this big inflatable, a whale and an inflatable ball that we bought yesterday. So at the pool, it says no toys, but we've been here for a month and the kids all bring their big and small toys to the pool. So we thought, okay, we'll get one of those and we'll have some fun. And we were playing with this girl, Portuguese girl who also lives in the building. And then all of a sudden this woman said, you're not allowed to bring these toys into the pool, get out. And I thought, okay, we took out the whale. Lima and the girl were still playing with the ball. And then she came back and told them, you can't play with the ball and da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, how come? Is that like, it's the rules. I said, yeah, I know, but I just trying to understand, why are these rules? Like, is it because of noise? She didn't let me finish. She said, it's the rules. You're not allowed. It says there. And I said, okay. So after she had told Lima and the girl to stop playing with the ball, I walked over again because Lima was also asking, but why? And, when Lima asked me, but why? It's just an honest question. It's not like to be like defensive or go against what I'm saying. She just, but why? So I walked over and I said, excuse me, I just wanted to know, like, try to understand what's this about? It's the rules. You have to follow the rules. It says there. And it's just because of the rules. I said, yeah, I know, because of the rules, but why the rules? Is it noise? Because in my head, I was like, we can be noisy without the toys and we can be quiet with the toys. If she's bothered, then we can be quiet, but playing with our toys. And I said, it's just the other kids were playing with them. She said, no. You ask the person who rents out your apartment if you want to know, but you were just questioning me and questioning the rules. And this sentence is this, it was this moment where it was so clear to me, people who are in the system, in this hamster wheel, they don't like people questioning anybody, especially no kids. So there's,
or even in your example, it's like you're the kid.
Yes.
Well, it's your child's curious mind going, but yes. Why? Is it noise? Is it, I'm going to hit you with the ball? I'm going to splash water on you? Well, I'm going to do it anyway. Is it, what is it? What is it exactly? Yeah, sure. And people don't question the rules, but also create new rules over and over again that aren't even there. Or extrapolate because we don't know why the rule is there, so we make more rules. It's amazing how quickly the mind will just proliferate and create more and more ideas and rules. And then you're trapped because you never asked the first question.
Yeah.
Right? When we're kids, we're told, you're asking too many questions. Why? But that's how we begin to start thinking and starting to use our mind and be able to, find the answers and keep exploring and having a great discussion rather than, well, I'm going to tell you my rule, you're going to tell me mine, and then we're going to have a fight.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what she said.
Battle about whose rules are better than someone else's.
Yeah. And she made it like, but you're are you arguing? Like, you're discussing this. And I said, I'm just trying to have a conversation. And she said, this conversation is over. And she put her head on her face.
Right, right. Well, it's very stressful, isn't it, to someone?
Yes.
I have a lot of compassion for her, because it must be hugely stressful if I have not, I think of myself, if I hadn't questioned the rules, I just followed the rules. So for whatever reason, I can get along in the world better. People tell me what to do, and we know very well that doing that has led to Nazi Germany, has led to, the communist rulings that have, come down and killed untold numbers of people. And yet we don't look back in history and say, well, maybe we need to be able to think a lot better and have conversations. But I can understand how stressed she would be, because she never did it.
Yeah.
And all of those, how do you hold all your rules in your head and then go out in the world? I know tons of people who just, I'm fine at home, but the minute I go outside, especially nowadays where, a lot of people don't get married, a lot of women live alone, with their cat, right? And then they go out in the world. Well, it is a stereotype that is going around right now, and they're fine in their house with their cat, but the minute they leave the house, everything bothers them.
Yeah.
Everything, right? So they want everyone to follow the rule that they know is the one you're supposed to follow to get along in the world and to have the least amount of triggers possible.
Yeah.
Right? And you and I, well, I'm sure you know this, that we know that when we're triggered, it's the same as the writer Rilke, who said, maybe the dragons of our lives are princes and princesses calling out for our attention. I'm probably paraphrasing, but I always think of our traumas as something that keeps trying to get at us. But how do you know you have a trauma? Well, I have to be triggered.
Yeah.
Something has to trigger it. Otherwise, I'm going to walk along life thinking everything's just fine and dandy, right? I'm just going to think, okay, it's all fine. But the moment I'm triggered, I know something is not right. And that's the only way I'm going to know it, right? If we had no conflict, what would happen?
Especially with kids around, there's conflict every day because they just mirror us. I used to be in my kids' position. I used to be that little girl being told what to do sometimes.
I'm going to contradict you. Not used to be. You're still that little girl.
Yeah.
You just gave an example of you being a little girl, some lady going, follow the rules. And you went, what? Why? No, we don't forget that little kid. And that, I think that you just brought up the best part, is that we're still the little kid, but many people have forgotten. I don't think you've forgotten. I know you well enough to know you haven't forgotten that little kid thing. I know you're a mommy too. And, you go into mommy mode, but then you come back and you're like, well, I'm still a little kid too. And I don't know why this rule is there.
Yeah, no, I'm
reminding you that.
Yeah, no, for the last few months, all I've been doing is kind of holding my little Sylvia when I got triggered, and just have compassion instead of getting angry with myself when I had to go at my girls, because I know this comes from back then when I was little, and like every parent makes mistakes. No one gets safe from, conditioning and little traumas, big traumas, but they're all in there and getting triggered all the time.
All the time. Until they're not, right? That's always a hopeful place until it's not. I mean, you and I have been through enough to know that there was a time, I'm sure you'll relate to this, that I was triggered constantly. I felt as though I had 5 triggers going on at the same time. My mind was so full of stuff. And, there would be a cascade effect of whatever it was. Like my neighbor would wear her shoes in the house and it would bang, and all my tchotchkes, those little things that are on bookcases, would move, and it would just drive me insane, especially if I needed quiet time or I was working, and it would drive me insane. And the funny thing was, not everybody heard this person. It was really weird. And I did, a lot of treatment. I probably did 10 hours of treatment just on that noise. And then one day I was outside talking to my neighbor, and she said, "That girl upstairs and her heels, I can't stand it." And all of a sudden I realized I don't hear her anymore. Mind blowing, right? How you can just see the conflict in your mind. You become aware of it, and then all of a sudden nothing bothers you. And how that, whatever that trauma was, I can't even remember what it was, but those wounds that are sitting inside you to follow the rules and not make noise and not get irritated, etc., just went. And I just went, well, how did that happen? But I can't even hear her. How does that even happen? And it's just taken years to really understand, oh my God, one trigger after another. You start, I guess I could say, I'm just trying to find new ways to explain that this work that I do, that you and I do, that your whole podcast is about, right? It's just, what are we really doing? My teacher, Esther Veltheim, just says awareness. And, I've said that since I was a kid. If you just see what you're doing, you're going to stop, right? If you see what hooks you into an addiction, you're going to stop. And then, oh, okay, so now I need to know how my mind functions, right? Isn't that like one of your curious things? Like, how does this thing function? It just goes along without me. And then I get all these feelings and emotions. And then I feel like I'm going crazy, which is like, well, where are you going to go if you go crazy? It's already crazy up there, right?
Can you explain a little bit how you said you did a lot of therapy, I think you called it, to work just on that noise from that girl above you?
Right, I did the questioning
you
you're talking about, and Esther Veltheim is the one who created the breakthrough system. And I would just sit and find out exactly what I thought was triggering me. So let's say that day I used a trigger like being disrespected. That was a big, strong one. That it's not respectful that she wear her heels. It's not respectful to make noise and cause disruption to other people. Yeah, I was still kind of saying to myself, yeah, but she could make noise. I mean, that's all right. I mean, yeah, you can make noise, but not persistent and constant, never-ending noise. I didn't sign up for this. Get yourself a carpet, take off your shoes, have some respect. And whatever, I went through the breakthrough process and asked, in those days, it was funny, there weren't many people doing breakthrough. So what we would do is I'd call people up, like co-students, because I had just discovered the system. So it was like in the first 3 months I discovered it. I'd taken my first class. So I didn't know a lot of people. I just knew the students from class. So I'd say, come on, just do this with me. But I had already had my own technique that I used. So I was kind of mixing the two together so I could get to the result. It's just as much as explaining what I've been doing for the last 50 years, I'd say, of my life. Wow. Probably say that when I was 6 years old, I started really being aware that it's important to question the beliefs that people have. I'd watch my mom get frustrated with something, or I go, but you're assuming what the other person means. You need to ask them what they mean. And I was just little. Yeah. I was already telling her what to do. In any case, as I grew, I needed, I went down different roads, and they weren't all that great. And then finally I met Esther, and she just has this way of seeing things that's very, very, very powerful. I'm highly intuitive, which could sound really good, but my intuition can usurp the use of my intellect. So I could, because it's so strong and it's dominated me, and I've been dependent on it, and it's what keeps me very safe, or has kept me very safe. And people would always say, oh, Terryann, whatever you say, even though in that first moment you want to say you don't know what you're talking about, you're always right. So it was, it's very strong for me. But one of the things that was so difficult in especially discovering Esther, who just has this beautiful way of using her intellect. She would be laughing now if she heard me say that, but she's very humble about it. But I just find she can cut through the dross really quickly. But we do, and I think I do that as well, but in a very different way. I'll do it intuitively, where she can get there through the proper use of the intellect. So the last 10 years for me has been learning to use my intellect properly, like asking a good question, asking a question that is concise, asking something strong. So why I'm bringing that up is that way back, you'd ask all these questions, list all your beliefs, you'd see the paradox in the beliefs, which we still do today, right? You list the paradox, you see the contradiction. As soon as you see the contradiction, you go, what? That makes no sense. And all of a sudden, there's an actual physiological counterpoint, which is your nervous system has all these contradictory beliefs in it, and it starts to relax, like literally relax. And all of a sudden you've seen it, you can never go back, right? It's like you see this cup, and now you saw the cup, you can't unsee the cup, kind of thing. So it's the same with our beliefs. But usually we're talking. One of the things I do a lot in sessions, so I do something called body talk, I do breakthrough, I teach breakthrough, I do tarot, I teach tarot, and I also do this, my work in an intuitive way to figure out what's going on with an individual, and then get the intellect to help us out. So how do I do that? Well, sometimes when somebody's really in trouble, I just start to write down, I record it, but I write everything down that they say. And once they're finished, I just say, Brett, say whatever you want. And they talk. And then I read it back to them. And usually they go, you really heard me. Number one, they like that. That's really important. You really heard me. So they feel that I find that's a healing process on its own, is that they were heard.
Yeah. The
second thing that really hits them is, why do I contradict myself a lot? And that's another part of the healing, right? So before I even, before I might even introduce them to, the breakthrough system, we can work breakthrough in many different ways. So what is breakthrough? Well, you identify what triggers you, you ask questions about the beliefs, you have to take some responsibility for your behavior. You see your identity, which is the original wound, and then you kind of come to this new awareness. You do come to this new awareness. So the moment we're triggered, the first thing that happens is we're goal-oriented. And now, people often mistake what I just said for, I'm not supposed to have a goal. Of course you have a goal in life. I have lots of goals in life. We had a goal to get on here together and, chat. Okay, that's fine. Goal oriented is, I'm not going in one direction. I'm only going to do one thing and I won't deviate from it. Kind of, well, very much like the example of the woman you're talking about. I can't think about options. I can't have a discussion with you. I only have one goal, is that you follow the rule. Why would she want you to follow the rule? Something's making her feel like she's in danger. Even if it's not the ball, even if it's not the water, even if it's not slipping, even if it's not the noise, it's, now you're breaking the rules. I'm afraid because you're breaking the rules.
She's out of control. She thinks she's out of control.
She's out of control. Yeah. So, and if we're using her as an example, but don't ever dismiss that we've been through that trauma. And I'm not talking to you, Sylvia, you know that, but there are going to be people listening, and I always look at, when I see something in other people, I'm always looking at that mirror, where am I experiencing that? And also not blaming myself for it either, not blaming the other person, because that's our primary problem, right? Is blame and you make me. right? That's a big one. You made me do it. You made me feel this way. And we don't even think about those words. We never think about what they mean, right? The first thing you might think is, you made me feel embarrassed. So the first thing I might think is, well, you forced me to feel embarrassed. You did something that forced me. And yet you never touched me, you never handcuffed me, you never did anything to me. You was the generic you, not you, Sylvia. Yeah. So we don't think about these words, yet they are, I tend to get a visual here where I see made me, you made me, he made me, she made me, you made me feel bad, you made me feel insecure. It's like tied up in so many pieces of I blame you, which might sound like the most uninteresting thing to work with, but it's so fascinating to work just with blame. Because this is what I work with, is where you are blaming, whether you're blaming yourself, whether you're blaming another, whether you're blaming your genetics. We can blame our genetics. We can blame our bodies for things. We can blame all kinds of stuff. And that's the crux of my work. Even body talk is energy medicine. So it's based in the practitioner sees lines of communication that are broken down. You see them and you link them up together just by observing. And then there's a physical tapping that goes on, but you can do it from, 1,000 miles away and do that tapping. And it joins up again. So even when I do that work, everyone's got a different focus. There are some people who work with genetics. Yes, I do work with genetics, but it's not my focus. Like there are doctors, in the body talk system who work with, actual DNA in their medical field, and then they come and do it. So that's their focus. So even when I do tarot, if I do body talk, if I do Reiki, whatever it is that I'm doing, it's always supporting the individual to unravel those bits of blame and you make me to support that freedom that we get, right? Because some people even have vengeance or resentment. I blame you and I can't wait to get back at you. But then who's suffering? Who ends up suffering? Yeah, it's me who suffers if I've got vengeance or resentment against an individual. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And my favorite thing to do is to help someone just see what they haven't seen before. And as long as they see it, that awareness is enough to make a huge shift. I don't know that movie, I used to talk about it so often. It was What the Bleep Do We Know? It's so old now, that movie, but 20 years ago it was the big thing in energy work. And at one point in What the Bleep Do We Know, it shows a Native American. I don't know if they call them here in Canada, we call them First Nations, but it's a Native American who's standing looking out at the water. And all of a sudden he sees in the water that the waves have a cut in them. And he's like, that's not possible. What's there? And he's staring and staring and staring. And finally he sees a ship. So he had never seen a ship before. And then all the others come and go, look and see that thing. And they go, I don't see anything. And he touches their third eye, and then they see the ship. I love that analogy, that once you can't see it, it's right in front of you, right? Usually the problem is right in front of us, but we'll point to the person and we think they're the perpetrator, right? So there are all these things in our lives that are the protagonist, and they're triggering whatever's going on in us, but usually it's hidden in plain sight. So if you look at somebody like, I was talking about this the other day to someone that are our closest people in our lives, the people who are closest to us give us exactly what we need. And you'll hear wives going, my husband doesn't give me what we need. He never supports me. He never does what I want. He never cleans up. He never. And then when you start unraveling it, the very thing they're accusing them of is what they want to be the ones, let's say, who are the supporters of the entire, I support the entire family. Yeah, they might be complaining about it, but I support the entire family. And that's keeping them safe. Because the moment you support me, then I'm going to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm going to be weak. And when they get to that, realize it, oh my God, if my husband actually supports me and I let him support me and I let him take care of me and I let him clean up after me, I'm going to feel weak and useless. And then it unravels and all of a sudden their marriage just improves. It's so amazing. So that's another beautiful part of this work, is just seeing couples really understand what they've been actually supporting themselves with and what they could really have happen. But yeah, if a husband doesn't support the wife in whatever the wife's saying, he's probably, they're a husband will support a wife in so many different ways, and a wife will nurture. And I mean, we can all take on both the male and female roles, of course, certainly, but it's more traditional that once, if somebody's, and I'm saying traditionally, even if the female is more masculine and the masculine is more feminine, there are many men who stay at home and take care of the kids, and the woman, goes out to work. That's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, all of these things are fine. It's just that traditionally, if you're in the female role, you're going to tend to be more nurturing and multitasking and all of that kind of thing, because when you have a real guy's guy, I don't know if you've ever gone through this, but a guy's guy trying to take care of the house, you just can't do it. It's just a guy's guy, because he's got to focus. You got 50 things, you got the kids stuff all over the place, you got all this, and the guy comes in and he starts, well, I'm going to clean the clothes, and every little, whereas the woman's like all over the place doing the clothes or the feminine, you could say. I don't like to, I think a woman will embody the feminine a lot more readily, because our nervous systems are designed to have babies and be able to handle the influx of emotions, right? Doesn't mean men can't handle emotions. That's not the point. But our physiology is better designed to handle so much emotion and so much hormone and all this stuff that goes on. I mean, it's a biological thing. But also we know that there's differences between feminine and masculine, but that doesn't always have to do with man, woman. Does that make sense? It's a very complex thing. So a lot of people talk about it in such simplistic terms. Like, I do a lot of studies of, this is what the feminine does, this is what the masculine does. And then people go, yeah, but I'm more masculine. And I'm like, yeah, sure. A woman might say, I'm more masculine. Yeah, sure. No problem. If you use the traits of feminine and the traits of masculine, the qualities, which I've done for many years, and you make lists of them, and then at different times you could check off where you are. And sometimes, oh my God, I'm super feminine right now. And the other time, I'm super masculine. It's just good at the pen.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I used to be a bit of a tomboy when I grew up, because I grew up with boys. And now that I have Lima and Bo, 2 girls, like before starting this, we were sitting on the floor and Bo wanted me to put the earrings on her, and she drew on her face like makeup. And I felt really girlish and feminine, and I was enjoying this moment, and I thought, this is really nice, we can do this together. But yeah, we have feminine and masculine in there, and in some moments, if you just are, just present, then sometimes you're more masculine, sometimes you're more feminine. Even with girls, with them, sometimes we can fight and we just roll around. And I just like seeing that, with the kids. For them, there's no beliefs around it. I mean, sometimes they do say things like, why is he wearing a pink shirt? I thought pink is just for girls. Or this is for boys. It's a t-shirt with a dinosaur on or something. And there is conditioning happens, whether you like it or not, whether you want it or not.
I want to laugh so hard, because when I first met my husband, I was going to teach in the UK at the time, and I said, oh, there's this shop I really like there for men's shirts. I'm going to buy you a bunch of shirts. What colors do you like? And he said, anything but pink. So yeah, the first thing I see is this pink and blue check shirt. I'm like, he's going to kill me. But I couldn't resist it. I just knew it was going to look good on. Anyway, he loves it. And I've since then, he's bought like polo shirts that are like one salmon and one pink, which, originally he wouldn't buy. And I'm like, it's the best thing. You look so good in it. It's like wonderful. But the poor guy he wouldn't do it at the beginning. I thought, oh my goodness, how much, we can change. And I'm not going to do it, but maybe it just had nothing to do with anything. I'll just pick these silly colors. Yeah, it's so funny.
But when I was a kid, I remember this boy at the tennis club, and he used to play with Barbies, and until he was like a teenager. And he's not gay, he's a really nice guy. And I just wonder, of course, the parents have a lot to do with it. Then at school, he would probably be laughed at if they had found out. What would you say can parents do? Because a lot of parents are listening to this podcast who are unschoolers, who just, give their kids the freedom what to do with their time. What can they do apart from, of course, working on their own beliefs to not pass it on, so that their kids grew up with less drastic or, one-sided conditioning? What would you say?
I would say you'd have to keep questioning. Like you're saying this child was playing with Barbies, but what was he doing? Was he a designer, like a fashion designer with the Barbie?
I don't remember.
Quite frankly, when I was a kid, I have a very different way of viewing my childhood. There are people who often say I was a tomboy. I don't, but I wasn't girly. And I wasn't like, I just always felt like I'm me. And I didn't want to wear makeup. And I had this weird thing, 12 years old, a lot of the girls were already ready to wear makeup and grow up. And I'm like, my wish at my sweet 16 birthday, imagine 16 years old today. And then imagine me sitting there, cake, candles, making my wish and just really wishing I never want to get older than 16. My first boyfriend was like, aren't you gonna like go out with me without your little sister? I'd always have my little sister, she's 7 years younger than me, hooked onto my waist. I go, what for? Like, this is how naive and innocent or whatever I was. I didn't see it as like, I knew there were girls and boys, and no, I didn't want to be a boy. I wanted to have some of the things boys had, that the girls didn't have, because I was brought up, which today I would say was a good thing. But in those days, I didn't consider it so good. My brother was freer to go out on his own. And when he was 15, he was given a ticket to go to the Bahamas on his own. And I wouldn't have been able. My mother won a ticket. She always wins things, this woman, and she gave it to him. But I had already been given a trip to France, but with the school. And I would prefer to have done it on my own, I suppose. It was all good. But at that time, I knew there was a difference. I knew there was a difference in what he could do and what I could do. And now I appreciate that difference. But at the time I didn't. I know this is going to be a long, protracted answer because I don't really have advice for parents, per se. But I do have a lot of things to say that we can be doing for ourselves constantly. Now, I have stepsons. I'm waiting for them to have kids. I have nephews. I have a niece. All my clients. From I got a 2-year-old. I've got 1-year-olds to 80-year-olds as clients, and I got animals. So I have my own little animal who is a tiny little thing. It's about this big. It's a bird. Yeah. And I've been physically ill for quite a long time. Now I'm fine. Physically not dying, but I had no hips. My hips were completely worn away, and I finally got new ones, and life is very different right now. But during that time, that it was a 10-year period, I had been in pain and, just kind of trying to figure out what we needed to do for my body. It was just not being discovered properly. And got this bird. And this bird is absolutely spoiled. Absolutely. I've had people who come in who are experts with birds and like, you spoiled him. You've just spoiled him. You've got to, give him limits. All right. So of course I work a lot. So I'm here in this room on the computer. You can't hear him now. Usually I let him free, but because we're doing a podcast, I said, no, we're not going to have him screaming in the background. It's quite loud. he's tiny like this, but he's very loud. And if I let him free too long, I will come out and he will just be so mean. He will be nasty to me. He won't come near me. He'll turn his back. I mean, he's just a real character. All right, so what's all that about? Well, one big thing has helped a lot is, sure, my body healed, and now we have a better rapport, he and I, because I can take more time to talk to him. I can move around and talk to him rather than he has to come to me because I couldn't stand even. So I had a walker, and it was a difficult situation. So poor little bird had to fly to me. All right. Now is figuring out, because he's been spoiled for a long time. So here I am, like any parent who's got an unruly child, and figuring out, how do I create this relationship with him? So what I'm doing is finding out where is my, I read about, I think it's Cesar Millan, who's got some great books, but he talks about training dogs, and you have to be like Cleopatra. Well, now I'm working really hard to find my Cleopatra. I can't access her very well. Like, I'm literally still doing some really dumb things with this bird. Like, he'll bite me, and I'll take him and I'll kiss him. And I'll just kiss him and kiss him until he starts doing his little giggly thing and he goes crazy. That's not conducive to training. I have a good friend who always looks at me and goes, she says, that's not your Cleopatra. That's like your mummy side, the mummy who wants to take care of everything. So what am I doing? Well, I just keep looking at, what am I doing? And as I notice that I'm kissing him when he does a bad thing, and how would Cleopatra do it? She would just dismiss. So what I do now is I usually take him gently into a towel, and I put him in his cage, and I just walk out. Well, what do you think happens?
It goes crazy.
No.
He's
quiet. He's in the kitchen in his cage now. He did a bad thing, bad boy thing. I did that, put him in, and he has been dead quiet.
Okay.
I'm like, wow, it really, really works. Now, I am addicted to being the mummy. It's my job. I'm the mummy to my clients. I'm the mummy to, my students. I've always been the mummy. I'm also Greek, right? So Greek origin, and just very mummy. Welcome, come, I hug you, I kiss you, I do all these things. So I keep watching the mummy part of me. And as I see her, now this is just a whole other technique that we can do in our lives, right? And watch that part of myself. I'm not watching the bird.
Yeah.
Right? I'm watching myself. It's going to be interesting to see. I also notice as I do this, my dynamic with my husband changes. He starts to see me a little bit sexier. He's like, I'm like, what's going on there? What am I changing in my energy? Well, a lot. So that's one big thing we can do. So we can do this work. You can please listen to Sylvia's podcast. She's on the track of doing something miraculous for people. Like, I can't even imagine how lucky you are that you get to have the guests that she's going to invite, Sylvia's experience, Sylvia's work that she's done. Wow, just an impressive mom, impressive person that she's been, and she's got an impressive husband too.
Yeah.
So the two of them are really, a couple of powerhouses and these two gorgeous kids that that she's been figuring out. And that's not to say that you haven't had your moments and that stuff, but what you've done to figure it out. So that's another thing that please continue listening to her podcast. Find, re-listen to even what we're saying here. There are gems in here that help you find out, even though I'm talking about my bird, it's the most simple thing, but it's a very complex issue. Because there was one point, I'll tell you, with this bird that my husband said, this is ridiculous. I'm afraid to go into my own house.
Oh.
He could dive bomb my husband.
Oh, well.
So it can be, and he's very tiny. And once he dove bomb bit my husband whacked him.
Oh.
Threw him across the room. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna, now it's getting dangerous for him, for his life.
Yeah.
If you're, because he bites and draws blood. Okay. So, he needs a lot of training because he's just dominated. He thinks he owns it. And these little birds, they're parrots. They're very territorial. They even say that if you bring in another one, you have to make sure they live in separate cages, or the one who's been here will kill the other ones. So they're quite something. So I'm not joking when we're understanding ourselves and what we're doing and how much we can shift just by observing. What is my go-to? What are my habits? What are my addictions? That's another thing. Another thing is get breakthrough sessions. There are a lot of people, there are quite a few people out there that are doing that. You can go to the breakthroughiba.com and Esther's on there, and you'll see the rest of us. And mine's urbanretreat.com if you want to get sessions with me.
Yeah, I'll post the link below under the video.
Great. And the other thing is what Sylvia started with today. Have that curiosity of a child to question the very assumptions you live by day in and day out. One exercise that could be astounding to you is pick a day and just take a pen and like a little note paper. Oops, I just made the camera go funny. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. You just take a pen and paper and you make a little symbol, like a check mark, every time you make an assumption. All you do is make a check mark every time you make an assumption. You could do that also with expectations, but start with an assumption. You'll probably be astounded by the end of the day how many assumptions you've made during the day. It's incredible. You just look at it after you just see all these marks and you go, wow.
Aware of it.
Yeah. You could do it with how many judgments did I make a day? Not discernments, not like I shouldn't eat this or I shouldn't eat that, but those critical judgments. But the two that are the most important are my assumptions. How many assumptions am I making? Or another day you could do your expectations. And why would I say expectations? Well, expectations. I remember in the 90s, a gentleman used to come into the store that I worked in. I was the tarot reader there, and I was building up my business. I was just young and just starting in all my work. And he came in and he said, we would have these really long philosophical conversations, and then we had this talk about expectations. And no matter what he was doing to question and talk about expectations, I said, I don't see that there are any expectations that could be good. And he said, but they're reasonable ones. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think any expectation. So that's something that, I'm not going to have a debate about. It's something you look at within yourself. And I obviously, I think you agree with me. And and Esther, I was talking to Esther as well, and I said, I don't think any expectations are good. And she said, me neither. I don't think there are any. I mean, there's always a possibility there could be one that pops up that maybe is healthy for us, but at this point, I haven't found one. Not
So an
one.
expectation is just another way of saying you should, like these rules that you have in your head, people should be doing or saying or thinking or feeling or whatever. That's an
Or what
expectation.
about, I expect the sun is going to rise tomorrow.
Wow,
And
you
yet,
went far.
well, a lot of people tell me that, yeah, but I expect the sun to rise. I go, yes, but, is that an expectation or something that is happening anyway? It's not that you expect it to rise, but if you expect that it's going to be a sunny day, you're going to be in, you might be in a problem. Like here, I woke up today and oh my goodness, it got so dark, and then I didn't have all my lighting set up. So
Yeah.
strange lighting. Okay,
Yeah.
well,
I
that's life.
suppose it's also expectation is taking away from the present moment. Like you're in the future, you expect this and that to happen, which is always the future, and then you're not present. And if I'd like to add something to what you said earlier, just to clarify, when you said what you're doing with the bird, or what you did, you're finding your Cleopatra and you put the bird away and that worked. It doesn't mean that parents have to put their kids away into their room.
Oh no.
It means that you need to start, being, observing, and then you'll act upon it. Like you will do, and then you will have. Which is something that Rob has been talking about a lot lately, just this observing, and then everybody, if you do it out of more like intuition, then rather than your mind, which are your beliefs and your rules, then anything can happen. Sometimes we will get a bit firm with our children, sometimes we will get loving, like you do the kissing with your bird, and sometimes this will work, sometimes the opposite will work. But getting away from these fixed rules that this is how you're supposed to act, or what you're supposed to do when your kid acts out or does this or that. It's more this observing yourself, observing your thoughts and what you're feeling, how you get triggered, and then you can.
And even just as simple, is this about you or about your kid?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it about me or is it about my child? I've known a lot of parents to be super embarrassed when their child is screaming in the grocery store.
Right.
And I love when kids scream in the grocery store. I love it. And so I didn't know about this whole thing. I really was very naive about it. I had no idea parents were embarrassed about it. I learned eventually, because every time there was a screaming kid, I'd go up to I'd get closer to the kid and I'd start screaming, because being in public and in a crowd and doing grocery would just drive my nervous system crazy. I just have this sensitivity to things going on around me. So when there was a kid screaming, I'd find them in the aisles and I'd go next to them, with the kid, I'm 63 now and I would still do it. I haven't gone to the grocery store yet with my new hips, but I will eventually. But what's so funny is the parent would look at me and go, what are you doing? I'm like, oh my God, I get how your kid feels. I can't stand being here. I feel like I'm in a cage, but I got to be here and I got to do the grocery shopping. And I look at the kid and I go, thanks so much for letting me scream with you. And I walk away, And then later on people would say, oh my God, my child screaming would be terrible. I'm like, it seems only natural to me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying every child's going to scream in the grocery store, because some kids are just fine with it. But kids like me don't want to be in the grocery store. It just causes a whole static energy, or go shopping, or be in a department store, or be in a mall. I walk in and my body already starts getting irritated, because some of us are very sensitive to these things. Mm-hmm. So yes. And the bird thing, by the way, it is a technique that you put the bird in the cage. It is not a technique I don't think, to put your child in the cage.
I mean, there are people who do that, who think that that's the way to do, like the super nanny. She goes, stick your kid in the corner, stick your kid into his or her bedroom, a naughty corner, and time out. And this is all the shaming. And that I don't think is ever helpful. like short term or long term, because it just makes the person, the kid, feel bad, and it creates these.
I think the parents should put themselves in timeout. I've recommended that many times.
It would be worth trying it out. It's
well, when your kids are running around and having fun and playing, and you've got a headache, put yourself in timeout. Like, let the kids play. Like, you're the problem, they're not the problem.
Yeah, most of the time it is that case.
Well, again, coming back to, like, if when I was experiencing a lot of terrible things while I was in pain. I was in severe pain. So there are certain things that would, drive me crazy, like too much talking or the TV too loud. Well, I didn't tell my husband to lower the TV. I didn't tell him to stop talking to his son. I'm the one who put earphones on, ear blockers on, we go, headphones, and I went into the room and I made things quiet, and I designed it so that I could take care of what's going on with me. But again, you're making me feel bad. We're back to make me.
Yeah.
Check in on yourself. That's a big one. Check in. If you're thinking your kids are making you do anything, like one of the most tragic things that I have to say I would have a really hard time with, is when a parent would say, if it wasn't for my child, I would be, if it wasn't for my child, I would do that. If my children would only appreciate me, I'd be fine. And I'd be like, wow, that is not what a mother does.
Yeah, no,
that is not what a parent does. A parent needs to get their kids strong and get them out of the nest. Just like I love the eagle stories, right? So the eagles are way up high in the arete. They have their little eaglets. They feed it. And then at some point they have to get out, and the mother has to kick them out, even if they fall down and never fly. They have to. That's survival. But now let's mollycoddle everybody, right? We're going to mollycoddle. And I'm very guilty of that. I just admitted I'm guilty of that with my bird. And I've created a spoiled bird and, dominating the house. Okay, not so good. I need to get my real mommy, not my, take care of. I got to have the real mommy that says, no, these are your limits. And it's very important to have limits, but not limits because you're making me feel bad. That's the big job. It's like, no, you have a limit because you have a place to be. You can live freely, you can do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to bite us.
Yeah, I suppose that's your limit, your boundary. Like, that's how I like to see it with the kids. I don't really need to tell kids what their limits are. I just need to set my own limits or boundaries, because every person is different. Like when we're out,
they can't hang out a window though. Like there's a limit to their safety. That's all.
Yeah. If it's a life and death situation, of course. But like, if I walk the streets with them and one of them starts shouting or whatever, I'm not telling them be quiet because you're bothering these people. I don't know if they're bothering these people. These people can speak for themselves. Or if we're in a restaurant and I don't know, Bo, sometimes she just speaks very loudly. And then I let other people set their own boundaries, and if I can see that somebody's really bothered, then I can point out, okay, from what I can see, I perceive this person is trying to relax and you're speaking very loudly. Then I set a boundary for somebody else. But usually I set my own boundaries and let other people set their boundaries, instead of limiting my kids to always like never be loud, never do this, never do that. It's from situation to situation.
And I agree. Like, I have a hard time with the phrase setting boundaries because I don't believe boundaries are set. I believe they're flexible and they're constantly moving.
Yes, definitely.
Defense is set. The boundary is moving. I don't think I'm setting it for myself or anybody else. I'm just saying, here's my boundary today.
Exactly.
Tomorrow might be a very different boundary.
Yeah.
You might say, Terryann, let's go for coffee.
Yeah.
And I'll go, no, I can't. I just can't. I can't deal with people. I can't deal with crowds. And then the next day, you witness somebody asking me to go for coffee, and I say yes. And you go, why did you go for coffee? Well, yesterday I couldn't. But today I can.
Yeah, exactly. No, I like that.
So our boundaries are something that keep moving, I think.
Yeah.
Though we're going to have certain things that here's an interesting one that makes life a little bit more difficult. We need to belong in many ways, right? And a lot of people aren't strong enough not to belong. Like if I do odd things and I'm not like everybody else, and I'm really strong and I can tolerate, the criticism, or go to school as a little kid. I'm different, like I was very different, so I was dark skinned, I was tall, I was fat, chubby, I guess fat, chubby, I don't know what you call the little kid. And, so you're yelled at, stones and rocks are thrown at you, you're tripped or whatever. But it didn't make me want to change myself. But until later, and I became anorexic. Okay, fine. But this, it works with the brain, right? Like our brains are pattern seekers. And when something is outside the pattern, we notice it, we point at it, right? So, I learned later on that if I'm seeking a pattern, I'm going to notice the tall person. If I'm my brain doing it without me, it's not my intention. I see it, and then you see a fat person, right? And you go, oh, you're fat. Oh, you're tall. Oh, you're short. Oh, oh, look, everybody's got blue eyes. You have brown eyes. It's not a criticism, and yet, we could take it as a criticism. It's just a statement, you're fat. If I knew it was just a statement, you're fat, when I was a kid, rather than thinking, that it's so bad and whatever, life would have been a little bit different. And then there's another thing. When children need to, it's very hard what I'm about to say. I haven't thought it through enough to introduce it, but because you brought something up, I think it's so important that we need to know that I'm not going to be accepted if I'm going to be the one screaming all the time. So if you got a group of people and someone's screaming, everybody might succumb to that person, right? Or everyone's going to ostracize that person. Oh my God, they give me a headache because they're screaming. So now how do we tell our child that? And I'll ask you, how do you tell your child that?
Well, I try to interfere as little as possible and that just, let things take their course, so that my children notice when something's not okay. I do say it sometimes, but that's the nice thing about living in a community with kids, lots of kids and kids of all ages and adults, which we're planning to do at a place to be, that the kids get immediate feedback from other people and not just from one person, the parent, the authority, if you want to call it that way. And then they will learn, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable within this community, because unless they go live in a cave or in the forest alone, there'll always be people around. There will always be a community that will give them feedback.
If I'm hearing you correctly, there is a certain amount of criticism in feedback that could be really healthy.
Yes.
Like you're too loud.
Yes.
It's not, I don't want to call it criticism, a critique, a comment. Right?
Yeah, like a
feedback. Maybe just feedback. You're just told, well, you're loud, so I don't want to be with you. Simple as. You can continue being loud all you want, but you're not going to be with me and maybe some other people or whatever.
I mean, when the kids were smaller, like they would lash out, Lima would hit someone because they would take her toy or wouldn't give it back or something. And then the kid might, cry. That's a feedback. or the kid might say, I don't want to play with you anymore. And that's another feedback. And I wasn't there trying to say, oh, come on, she didn't mean it. I just, let Lima see that her actions have consequences. And that's how she learned not to lash out, like a certain behavior within.
It's a good point, because our I think it's our genetics are really close to a rat's. And if rats play together, but if it's with if there are a bunch of rats with a bigger rat, and the bigger rat always wins in the game when they play a game, that all the other rats will stop playing with that rat. It's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that bigger rat, even though it can win all the time, has to let the littler rats win so that they can have that companionship and play. So it's the same with us. If you have one big guy who can always win and they never lose, then the rest of they don't want to play.
I think that's the important thing about what we're doing at A Place to Be, because we're just 4 people in this household. And whether you like it or not, the parents will always be a little bit of an authority. I try to give them all the freedom in the world to do what they want with their time. But of course, I put some boundaries in, like with screen time. And there was, a kid that Lima was playing with a lot, and then the kid didn't treat her very well. So we said, okay, let's keep it to like twice a week and not every day. I do step in sometimes, but
well, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, it's like you can't just let the kid go shopping and buy Cheetos and eat Cheetos all day. It's their health. Screen time is their health.
Yes. And that's what I want. Yeah, of course. But like, as I said, I don't want them to see the adults or me as a complete authority. So with A Place to Be, the kids will be making so many decisions, like hundreds of decisions a day, tiny and big, and who to play with, what to play, which classes to attend, which trees to climb, who to talk to, like just all these decisions that we make. And there'll be just interference when it's absolutely necessary, when the kids ask for help, when there's a safety issue. But learning this way in this community, and kids judge much less than adults. They unless they've been through schooling for many years, but we won't have that many kids coming from school. And that's what I want. That's also why I'm creating A Place to Be, so that my kids can grow up in this community where they get constant feedback from many different people, not just from me. And all the kids can just learn living in a community, having this responsibility within this community, of course, doing what they want, always respecting the boundaries from person to person. And
not
that's
always
very important, because the schooling
not always be careful.
Yeah. Not always, but they'll learn from that too.
It's like, wait a minute, somebody might be asking for too much, and maybe they need to be challenged, because it is important to also have that ability to challenge somebody else's boundary. Like if I go out there in your community and I want to go to the pool and I take 10 chairs to make my boundary, and I, put big speakers so I can't hear anybody, it would be probably a good thing if your kids went, hey, lady, I don't care how old you are.
Yeah. So it's all just learning by doing, and without many rules, and the rules will appear within the community. And that's the plan.
Well, not even rules, like probably a cultivation of respect.
Yes.
Learning, because I would never respect someone just because.
No.
I'll be nice to them just because that's what I do with people. I'm just nice to you, and polite, and kind, but that doesn't mean you've earned my respect, right? Respect would be something a little further, but respecting that the social contract is I talk to someone nicely. The social contract that I'm going to be able to ask someone to give up one of their chairs if they've taken 10 chairs.
Yes.
It's part of the social contract.
And we had that today or recently. Like sometimes I never ask my children to say please. Like I don't force them. If they forget to say it, I kind of say please, or if they forget to say thank you, I say thank you to the person. But then sometimes when Lima wants something that Bo has, then Bo says, only if Lima says please. And Lima, no, I'm not gonna say please. And I said to Bo, and it was today. I said she doesn't have to say please to get it, because the cheese is for everyone. She can have cheese as well if she likes without saying please. Please is something we do. That's how we treat each other, but she doesn't have to say it. And yeah, these moments where I don't know where Bo got this from. She only gets it if she says please, but it's kind of cute and funny, but it's a good moment to explain that you don't have to say it, but it's,
and also
we treat each other.
It's probably her trying to figure out what's going on in the world.
Yes.
Probably
yes.
witnessing it. Why is everybody saying please?
Yeah.
Witnessed somebody telling the younger person to say please. So now kids don't always have to ask the question, why do people say please?
Yeah.
They'll test it out.
Yes, exactly.
And go, oh, somebody did that. I'm going to test it out. And then she gets a response from you. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. There's
That's
a different
another
response.
good point, that kids don't need schools to learn things. They learn all the time. They learn when you're not aware of it. What goes on in the head, you have no idea, but it's a really good point that you just raised.
I remember actually doing that, and I'll still do it today. Like if I watch somebody doing something, I'm like, I wonder why they're doing that. I'm going to try it, and then I try it out.
Yeah.
And I've tried some of these things out, especially with my mom. I've seen her agreeing with certain ideas, and I go, she agrees with that. I'm going to try it, and I'll try it. She'll start yelling at me. And I'm like, okay, well, you liked it when so-and-so did it, so I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'll act like a 5-year-old. I don't know, just because I don't want to hear the explanation. I want to see, what will really happen
with your own eyes. Yes, that's amazing. That's how kids learn. That's what they do all day long until you structure them with the curriculum and a timetable. And yeah, this is great. So that's another thing for parents, for the listeners, stay in touch with your inner child and know that there's a child in you still running the show, and stay with a beginner's mind. And now it's a good moment to say thank you, Terryann, for your time, for this great conversation. I always love chatting with you. And if anybody wants to get in touch, it's leurbanretreat.com. Yes. I posted below. We talk about breakthrough, the method that you work with, which I've been doing for also 14 years. Did sessions with you. I did the courses. And I can only recommend doing this, and especially with Terryann, because I think she's the best. Well, so if you want to do a session, I've had some really life-changing experiences, many with you in the breakthroughs. So I really highly recommend doing a session with you.
And had some fun.
Yes.
Even through tears.
Yeah, true. Thank you, everyone, for listening to UnHamsterwheeled. Also, check out our project, aplacetobe.me, and speak soon and see you soon on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Nostra, and on the podcast, of course. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day. Bye.